Sometimes we need to take a step back and check our balance, check in on our balance and what's going on with that. Now, think of the words check and balance, right? This could also apply to like your bank account. You're writing a check and you need it to balance out. You're balancing out your checkbook. That essentially means that you're not going into debt. You're not taking more than you have. You're keeping it above the surface. And that's what we call balance. Okay. So just like that, we have different energetic components represented by the elements. And depending on how we connect with these elements and express them throughout our life, we can find ourselves getting out of balance. In other words, maybe leaning towards one element and away from another one, causing an imbalance or causing some sort of debt that can cause anything from burnout to being stuck in our head to being overwhelmed by emotions. These are all aspects of us coming out of balance. All right. So I want you to think about a wheel and how if a wheel is spinning like the wheel on your car, the reason it can go so fast without having any issues is because it's balanced, right? It's going to keep going in that direction and it can spin like reasonably as fast as you want it to. But if it was unbalanced, if it was heavier on one side and lighter on the other, you would get a wobble in that wheel. And if you just let it go and it was wobbling, the faster it went, the more it would cause distortion and eventually it would topple over. It wouldn't be able to maintain the spin and it would crash out. This is the same thing that happens when, say, we're getting super fired up about something, super passionate about it, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves burned out. Or we're getting super emotional about something and super into our heads about it, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves having no motivation, having no drive, having no desire, being pessimistic. It's things like this that we have to pay attention to how we are expressing these specific energies and how by bringing conscious awareness to them, we can actually create a balance in our life to where we can sustain a movement, we can sustain a frequency. Because remember, the wheel that I'm talking about is you. We are a torus field. We are an energy that is spinning. It's not as simple of a spin as like the wheel on your car, but it is a spin, it is a rotation. And this rotation needs to be balanced in order for it to reach a higher frequency. In other words, in order for it to move faster. If you get into higher frequencies and you're unbalanced within your elements, within your foundations, then you're going to topple over. You're going to experience some form of the balance being out of whack and you going into debt, right? Energetic debt, okay? So in order to balance these out, now I want to go through, I have some notes on this because I wanted to make sure I get all of these in their proper place. But I want to talk about the four elements, what they represent, how we can check in on them, how we can be aware of how it is that we're expressing them. So first off, we have earth, right? And this is pretty straightforward. It is your stability. It is your grounding. It is your feeling of being connected with your body and connected with the space that we're on. Now, in this day and age of technology and this and that happening all the time, I honestly feel like we could all use a little bit more grounding, unless you're actually just outside all the time and you're sitting on the ground and you're chill, right? But if you're not like that, if you are involved in like the real world and the chase of things, I think being grounded and having that connection, establishing that connection on a daily basis is so important. All right. Now, ways we can do this: walking barefoot, obviously, go put your feet in the ground, connect with the earth, connect with the physical body. Also, eating healthy quality food. This is one of the things that we consume that is a dense frequency. Doesn't mean it's a bad frequency, but it is something that connects us with the slower vibrations, which is the earth. All right. Now, slower doesn't mean distorted vibrations. Slower frequencies doesn't mean bad frequencies. Slower frequencies are more grounded frequencies, right? It is a deep tone, a deep pitch. And when we connect with that, it gives us a great foundation to build everything else on top of it. Another exercise you can do while you're walking barefoot is actually imagine yourself rooting into the ground. Imagine your like roots coming from your body, from your energy, and just digging deep into the ground and just feel that connection, feel that stability, feel that grounding. Okay. Next, we have water. Water is the element of emotions, being adaptable, flowing. Having our emotional balance here is so key because water is dense, but not like earth. Water is very fluid. And if you become too watery, your emotions can kind of become too loud. they can overwhelm you, and it can put you into a place where you're essentially taking on this quality that's the opposite of fire. Whereas fire is super passionate, super motivated, super ready to go. The water can, if it gets unbalanced, can quench that fire and make you feel like lethargic, like you don't want to do anything, like you're just heavy, carrying all of these emotions around. Ways to balance out your water element are to visualize water. You could obviously go sit in water, go put your feet in a river or something, go jump into the river if you want to. But to embrace the change and to visualize water flowing through you and think of it like a cleansing element, right? Water becomes toxic when it stagnates, right? So have you ever seen like a swamp where it's just the water's not going anywhere and it's got this smell to it and there's all this random stuff growing in it and there's bugs everywhere? That is stagnant water. The water needs to be flowing in order for it to be pure, in order for it to be that natural way, that flowing, powerful water that it can be. It needs to be moving. So find ways to channel those emotions, to allow those emotions to be released and to embrace change. Embrace what's coming, embrace what's going, allow that water to flow. All right. Next, we have the element of fire. And just like I said, with fire, this is about passion. This is about creativity. Fire is also like energy, being energetic. And I think it's very common for this element to be somewhat abused nowadays, because you'll see people who will like have energy drinks or something like that, and they're essentially like cheating. They're going into debt in order to like bring up their fire. This is the same thing with people that'll use like drinking or something like that to bring them back down. It's like you're taking from something else and you're trying to essentially get something from it for nothing, which is not how the balance works. All right. If your fire element gets too depleted, then you have no willpower, right? You become too watery. And that water element is just going to bog you down. It's going to keep you essentially lethargic and not wanting to do anything. We need the fire, we need the heat to actually go about having motivation in our life and channeling our passions and channeling our creativity and doing that in a constructive way. But we also have to remember that, you know, when people get all excited about like, now I'm going to go do this in my life and I'm going to make this happen, I'm going to make this happen, they get into this fire element and they can easily forget about the grounding element, the water element, even the air element sometimes, and then they get burned out because it's just fire, 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 passionate, passionate, passionate. I'm just going to go forever like this and I'm never going to like release from it. And then you get burned out. And then all of a sudden you went fire, 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 and then it balances out water, 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 water. So there always has to be that check and balance system. But with fire, we really have to pay attention to it. If you're going to do something fiery, you got to make sure you're connected to the water, right? Okay. So next we have air. And air is representative of our mind, our intellect, our communication. Air is all about stimulating the mind, stimulating the breath, connecting with the breath. Now, I want you to think about these four elements in terms of how they are actually present within our body. So the physical body, we have like the actual physicality, the earth that is our body. The food that we eat, right? These dense, solid things. Then we have the water, which it's like we can drink water. Our blood flows through our veins. And then we have the fire, which is essentially like the element of, I think fire is more of a like symbolic of the synapses happening within our body, right? Like our nervous system and like the electricity and the actual heat that comes from our body. Whereas the air, that is the breath. We take a deep breath and we relax. The mind can become unbalanced in the way that the mind becomes too shallow, if you will. The mind can just be like fickle thoughts, like random things going on, and it's picking up all of this information. And without taking that deep breath, connecting back in, taking a moment to slow down the waveform, the mind can just be like faster, 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 and it gets too much. It gets too unbalanced. So I want you to notice how when the grounding aspect comes out of place and the water aspect comes out of place, it's usually like things are getting too fast, things are getting too fast, things are getting too much, and then you burn out. Whereas it's the opposite when someone is too into the earth frequency and too into the water frequency. It's going too slow. I don't want to do anything. I don't even care. That's why like the air and fire and then the water and earth are kind of like opposite counterparts of each other. And we need to pay attention to which side we might lean to. It's not always going to be like that. Like I said, every single person is unique, but it's important to pay attention to which one of these is you might have a tendency to be your default, right? I know for my own example, like me personally, I tend to be more like air and fire when I really get unbalanced. It's like I'll just be so into this and I'll be forgetting about the emotional aspect, forgetting about the grounding aspect. And then before I know it, I'm trying to solve an earthly problem, like a problem of grounding using my head. And this is where things get interesting because we will tend to use like our dominant element in order to try to solve problems that could be much easier solved if we were to just go to that other element. But sometimes that's like not necessarily our norm, not necessarily our nature and our comfort zone. They're all our nature, to be fair. But like I said, we all have different tendencies. So pay attention to like if you're having a mental problem and you're trying to just like work it, or if you're having like a passion problem or something and you're just like fire, like more fire, like make it hotter. Think about maybe you could solve that way easier if you were to just like go to the water element, or if you were to go to the earth element, or say like you're in your emotions and you're deep in your emotions and you're just like all clouded and you're getting all swept up in it, like you're in the deep, you're under the water, you're well submerged, and you're just like there's no way out, like I'm sinking. Think about what element, how you're going to rise out of that, right? Maybe you should go to the air element. Maybe you should go to the fire element, right? Because the heat rises, the water comes down. Think about the interactions between these. And remember that within us are all four of these elements, and all four of these elements need to be in balance, a balance that works for you, right? You don't need to quantify this, but just pay attention to like, maybe I need to go step outside. Maybe I need to go touch some grass, right? Maybe I need to put my feet on the ground and actually just relax and let these emotions flow, let some of this clear, because now that I've done that, now my head is clear and now I know where I'm focused, and now I can take some deep breaths, and now I feel that healthy flame building up within me to where I can go channel this into something that is useful for me, channel this into something that is constructive and productive and is actually going to lead me into a more balanced state. All right. So remember, balance is a daily game. It isn't all the time game. It's more than just daily. It's not like we've achieved balance and then boom, I'm balanced. Like, yep, I'm just going to be here. I'm just going to stay here. That's not how it works. Okay. This is a very dynamic system. This is a very dynamic energy that we're dealing with. And as we go through this experience, we need to always be checking our balance. Okay, my friends? So I hope that helps. I hope that makes sense. With that, be whole, be well, and we'll talk soon. Take care.